Good afternoon and welcome to the 222nd episode of the Georgia Farm Bureau Georgia Prep Sports Drive for the GHSA State Title. I'm your host, Craig Seger II. We've got two guests today. We are throwing up the deuces. Our first guest is going to be Harrison's head coach, Josh Cassidy. Obviously a big-time program in 7A. They're coming off a really solid season. They got a ton of talent coming back, including their senior quarterback, and then we're going to have Lambert head coach Marc Beach on. So we'll go ahead and just get things started and bring on Coach Cassidy. Hey, Coach, how's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on. We appreciate all you guys do for our programs.
For sure. And last time you were on, it was, I believe, in October. You guys were coming off that big win over North Paulding. I know that one meant a ton. You guys had some tough results, but, I mean, overall, just talk about last season, the toughness you guys showed, and just what you guys were able to do just in that really talented region to get that playoff spot.
Yeah, like you said, it was a tough region. It was a tough schedule for us. We didn't finish the way we wanted to win-loss-wise, but 4 of our losses were by a touchdown or less, and our theme for this year is find a way. We feel like if we're able to do that, we can close the gap there.
Yep, and one of the areas that you emphasized was your offensive line. You said they were allowing you to get some big plays and get going. So in that department, how much do you have kind of returning this year?
Yeah, we're excited about our offensive line. We've got several kids with experience who are returning. One is Corey Burklow. He's going to be a returning starter on the offensive line. Cameron Carlin is going to be a returning starter on the offensive line. He saw reps last year. Landon Davis is going to be a returning starter on the offensive line. We also have Nathan Weimer, who's going to be a returning starter on the offensive line. And then Jaden Nagy, he was first team all-region at D-line. He's going to have to be playing some offensive line. So we're feeling good about where we are at that position.
Yeah, that is key. And then you'll have a multi-year starter returning at quarterback with Braylon Ford. I know he's got outstanding grades. I've seen some of the schools he's been thinking of visiting, whether it was Harvard. I think he'll be at a spring game this week. But talk a little bit about his opportunities at the next level and just what he'll be able to do his senior year.
Yeah, we're excited about Braylon. He's a returning starter. Not only that, he's a returning starter who made first team all-region, led us into the second round of the playoffs. We're excited about his opportunities to advance his career at the collegiate level, and we're in constant pursuit of that. Obviously, you guys know that the contact period is coming up right before we hop into spring ball, so he's been receiving interest from several schools from the Power 5, Group of 5, and, of course, within those Ivy League schools that you mentioned. So we're just excited for those guys to get on campus and to see his growth and development from the end of last season until now.
Yes, he had a great year last year, and obviously his top receiver, Brady Cluse. Talk about just that combo right there and just how they stack up against the best of the best in 7A.
Yeah, we're obviously excited about both of those guys. I mentioned Braylon being a returning starter, whereas Brady's actually going to be a 2-year starter. And right now he holds offers from Memphis, App State. He's got Ohio, Troy, JMU, Wofford, Army, Air Force. And then he picked up Navy, and then he's got a couple Ivies in Princeton and Dartmouth as well. But just what he brings to our program on the field it's irreplaceable. He's going to go down as one of the very best wide receivers to do it here at Harrison High School.
Yeah, certainly. He had some huge games last year. The Denmark game, 12 catches, 211 yards, 2 touchdowns. Really just one of those unstoppable players that can get open, catches everything. How much attention do you think he'll be drawing this upcoming season? How do you guys take advantage of that?
Yeah, he'll be drawing attention, and he drew attention last year. And the ways we take advantage of that is we have other players on the roster if they want to double them, and that's just what people do. But we'll also try to put him in a position where he can't be doubled. So that's our job, to be strategic in that regard. But the way we take advantage of that is try to be very strategic about how we make sure that we put him in a place where they can't take him away.
Certainly, and you're going to face a variety of different looks. We know, like last year, North Paulding, they were an explosive team. They passed the ball a lot, so you definitely had that flexibility. But in terms of just running the ball, what did you see from you guys last year, and then who do you have confidence in to come in and take those hard carries?
Yeah, so that's really up in the air as far as carrying the ball. I think a lot of that has to do with the offensive line and their production, because as the offensive line goes, so goes both the running and the passing game. But we're excited about the young guys that we have coming up at the running back position. And, looking at our roster, I know that Amari Watson is one that is going to be come back, hoping running the ball. Colin O'Hara, he is a rising senior. He was second team all-region at outside linebacker. He's going to have to run the ball some. Leon Gray was a second team all-region player at outside linebacker. He's going to have to run the ball a little. And then we've got some kids that played on defense last year that are going to have to run the ball a little bit. Austin Perry started at safety as a sophomore. Jackson Connor started at safety as a sophomore. They didn't see much time on the offensive side of the ball, but they're going to have to run the ball a little bit more. And we've got a couple other ones that we're going to have to lean on to run the ball for us this year. But again, everything both in the passing and running game is really going to be determined by the success of our offensive line.
Yeah, let's stick to the offense a little more. So you mentioned all those close games you guys had. I think 6 of them were pretty much down to the wire. You guys lost 4 of them. You won 2 of them. Those were some pretty big wins. Those were the ones that mattered. Obviously, you guys were able to answer within the game, but did it feel like you guys ever had the advantage where the other team was the one fighting back, or do you feel like you guys were pretty much the team that had to fight back to tie it up?
I think the North Paulding game, I felt like, we had the advantage. The Hillgrove game, we had the advantage. But other than that, it was a fight. And that's not to discredit those teams, because obviously North Paulding won our region. Hillgrove went to the playoffs. But, when you look at the games, those are the only ones where we were in control of the game the entire time. All of our other games, even the ones that we lost by a greater margin than a touchdown or less, at half we were in those, even against Marietta, because had we beat them, we would have been region champions. And the score was 7-0 at halftime, and that was a result of them blocking a field goal and running it back for a touchdown. So, I would say, to respect all teams, it was a dogfight with all of them. But the only 2 that we seemed to be in control of the majority of the game was against North Paulding and against Hillgrove.
Yep, those were huge wins. I think overall, the region, I think, will be even better this upcoming season. North Paulding, they're going to have to replace a lot. Boone Anderson was a great quarterback. It's a big-time receivers, too. You got a new head coach at McEachern. They were dealt with injuries last year. You talked about Hillgrove, how they were kind of in a similar position to you last year. They were in a ton of games really close. They played Marietta really well. I think Marietta will be back. So overall, just, how aware is the team just what type of Region 3 Class 7A battle you guys are going to have to once again compete in?
Yeah, that's 7A ball, really, I think, across the board. And so those guys understand what it takes. And that's why our out-of-region schedule, we tried to schedule that so that it would be competitive. And I think that, it was, when you look at our out-of-region schedule, we got South Paulding, who they're Class 6A, but they were a playoff team. South Forsyth, 7A, they were a playoff team. Paulding County was 6A, but they were a playoff team. And then, of course, Dalton, Kennesaw Mountain, Pebblebrook. All those out-of-region teams were going to the playoffs. And with the exception of Kennesaw Mountain, they were the only one that we played last year that did not make it to the playoffs, I believe. So we understand and they understand how competitive Class 7A is in our class, in our region. So we try to schedule those games, like, for example, our spring game is against North Cobb. So we try to give them exposure to the competition they're going to see once we hop into region play.
Yep, and I think the same can be said with those non-region teams in terms of them returning a ton of talent. What do you think about Pebblebrook, though? That's going to be the final game before the region. We talked to their head coach, Coach Woolridge, and what stands out to me is, I mean, that might be one of the fastest teams in the entire state with some of their skill guys. So, I mean, how huge is that going to be, that final test right before the region?
Yeah, and you'll see, you just never know what shakes out with these teams because, one thing we tell our players, you can have the fastest kid in the world going in the wrong direction and it doesn't help. So it all comes down with teams, how their coaches are putting them in the position. So I know, and it's no disrespect to the current Pebblebrook coach, I'm sure he's going to do an amazing job, but I know last year's staff, those guys had those guys going in the right direction. And so when you couple that with the speed that they had, it made it very difficult to compete against them. So I think it'll be a great test for us. And a matter of fact, every game prior to starting our region and, of course, getting into our region is going to be a test. There's not one game that I look at on the schedule that I'm confident that we're going to run away with it. But I am confident that they're all going to be very competitive and confident in our guys that they're going to go compete in those environments.
Certainly. And then I know the Denmark game, I think you talked about that was probably the game that had the most turnovers, disappointing result. You guys lost 25-21, end up that turns into a 4-game losing streak. So, I mean, what did that say about your team to have that tough stretch but then come out and close out the way they did?
A lot about those guys and our coaches. It's so easy because we're a results-based society, and there has to be a return on your investment. And for our players and our coaches, their investment is the time that they put in. The return is wins, at least for the players, not as much for the coaches. We're in it for more than that. So it's difficult to manage that, to be able to bring the same energy, enthusiasm, and attention to detail on a minute-by-minute, hour-by-hour, day-by-day, week-by-week basis when you're going through a 4-game losing streak like you mentioned. So it says a lot about our kids, our players, our coaches, and everybody that's connected to the program. I was very pleased, not pleased to go through the skid, but pleased to be able to make it to the second round, get to the Sweet 16, and represent our school and our community.
Yeah, and I thought defensively you guys were a very resilient team. Holden Trice, he ended up leading you guys in tackling. You pointed out how it really is a collective effort, though. You have to have the guys around him freeing up opportunities. But who do you feel like is going to be that leader of the defense, the vocal leader, that presence out there this year?
Well, I mean, you have to first think of Jaden Ackey. He was a first-team All-Region defensive lineman. He's going to be a 2-year starter. He's just phenomenal in that regard. And then when you get back to the linebacker core, it's got to be Colin O'Hara and Liam Gray. Liam actually, both of these guys played sparingly their 10th grade year, started their entire 11th grade year. And I expect them to be leaders on the defense. And then back in the secondary, we've got Quentin Charles, who's returning. We've got Amari Watson, who will be working on both sides of the ball. And even I expect our safeties. We got some young guys, like I said, a true sophomore last year, Jackson, who started. I expect him to be a leader. And we've got a young freshman who, I'm excited to see what he can do back there at that position as well. So those would be the guys that I would point out at each position group who I expect to take on a form of leadership.
Yeah, and Jaden Nagy led you guys in tackles for loss, led you guys in sacks. What type of season do you expect from him, just with that experience under his belt, being a guy that could potentially get in that double-digit sack range and really kind of pace 7A this year?
Yeah, I expect more of the same. I expect him to be a leader in all of those stats that you mentioned. I expect him to earn himself a scholarship this spring. I really do, because he has the size to be able to play at the collegiate level. So that's what I expect from him. More of the same of what we saw, and we're really excited about not just Jaden, but all of our players and all the work they've been putting in this offseason in preparation for the 23 season.
Yeah, and speaking of that, a lot of coaches say each offseason they try to just start from scratch, put last season in the rearview mirror. But if you compare just the guys you have this year at this point of the offseason, do you feel they're kind of steps ahead of where you guys were last year, just in terms of the focus and expectations?
Well, for us, we actually don't forget about the past. I mean, I think when you start at a new place, you may want that, but when they're your guys and it's your program, we want to learn from it. And so we've posted everything, the scores from ninth JV and our varsity programs last year, and how close we were to being able to be a program that was a 78% winnage program, and it was a touchdown or less to go from being the low percentage of wins that we were to being a 78%. So we've talked about that, and we think about those things. But as far as the off season, of course, for us, everything, the measuring stick is the 2019 season when our guys won the state championship, and so we keep track of all of our records. And for us, there's three things that we feel like give us an advantage, or at least that we can take an advantage over our opponents. Number one is the weight room. Number two is our condition, and number three is our intellect. And so we've already broken the record for squat from the 2019 season team. We are 6 players away from breaking the 800-pound club record, which is our bench squat clean. So
looks like we timed out. So that's Coach Leach. Hey, Coach, we will join you in just a sec. Just hang tight. Probably be about 2 minutes.
okay.
All right. So looks like Coach Cassidy got boosted off, but yeah, really want to thank him. And I just think it's really impressive. What makes 7A football great? Well, it's a team that comes out and plays 4 quarters and has a close game every week, puts themselves in position to win. That's exactly what Harrison did last year. 28-20 loss, 24-21. All of those came down to the wire. Hey, Coach, sorry, we had Coach Beach join us real quick, but yeah, I just wanted to say I'm really excited to see what you guys are capable of this upcoming season. Certainly there's a ton to build off, a ton to be proud of last year, and I really think that schedule is going to be outstanding. So we will definitely be keeping up with the Hoyas this season, and just thank you and good luck the rest of the offseason. All right. And yeah, so they eventually fell to Colquitt County in the second round. They played them well too, so I mean, that is what it's all about. Even if there were disappointing results every single time that Harrison took the field last year, fans were in for a treat. And really high expectations for Braylon Ford. He's coming off a huge season passing the ball. He's got his top receiver, Brady Klum, coming back. He was a 1,000-yard receiver. At one point, he was leading all of 7A. Talked about his big 220-yard performance against Denmark, and they also have a ton of talent returning on that offensive line. I think Harrison's going to be a really tough team this upcoming season. But let's go ahead and take a quick break. We'll thank our sponsors, Georgia Farm Bureau, and we'll join Coach Beach on the other side.
Our mission has always been to support Georgia farmers. That's why we created Georgia Farm Bureau Mutual Insurance Company, providing financial protection that farmers needed. While this remains the same today, we've grown to protect all Georgians through home, auto, and life insurance. From the very beginning and into the future, we stand for every Georgia community.
We are our Farm Bureau.
All right, welcome back. That's my fault. Najee sent me 2 call links, and I sent the coaches the same one because I was pressed for time, and of course he gets booted out. I will not do that again. But yeah, that was a great conversation with Coach Cassidy. I think Harrison in that region, I mean, they were 1 game away from winning it last year. And the interesting thing is it wasn't just Harrison. Hillgrove, Marietta, I mean, North Paulding was great, but a lot of those teams played tough non-region schedules, and then once that action kicked off, those teams really made a strong push and then made a ton of noise in the playoffs. But speaking of teams that coming off a great season. Let's catch up with Lambert head coach Marc Beach. Hey, Coach, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate you having me.
You bet. So, last year was your first year as head coach, but you were the offensive coordinator prior to that. Lambert obviously just had a tremendous season last year. Outstanding start, played really well. You guys were just dominating. What's the takeaway from just what you guys were able to accomplish last year, and just how proud are you of those guys?
Yeah, we had great senior leadership last year, and the kids just kind of bought in to what we threw at them, and we didn't get an offensive staff here until literally June 5th, which was the first day of workouts, and so we were really behind. We got to do 2 OTAs, and we went and got our butts handed to us a little bit by Walton, and kind of opened our eyes a little bit that, hey, we need to get better. And they just worked hard. They came every day, and we were very fortunate. We didn't have any injuries that, especially in the O-line. We played 5 O-linemen for 12 games, and that doesn't happen very often. We had a phenomenal quarterback who was able to create things, and we created a lot of 28 turnovers on defense. So it was, and we had a kicking game that was phenomenal. We gave up, Ryan Degansky was like 76% touchback, and we gave up 6 total return yards in 12 football games. So we were fortunate enough to be pretty solid in all 3 phases.
Yeah, that is huge. And obviously Ryan Degansky, that's going to be a tough player to replace. I mean, he was up there with, who was it from Mill Creek? I went to the state championship game. He put all 13 kickoffs into the end zone, so that's invaluable. So, yeah, let's talk about the kicker position. How's that position battle been going?
We've got a young Baker Kimbrell is a sophomore kicker. He's solid. He's gotten stronger in the weight room. He's not going to be as explosive as Ryan right now, but he's a very good punter as well, and so he can do all 3: kickoff, kick field goals. He was until last year in JV, he was perfect through 9th grade. He was 31 of 31 on his kicks in 9th grade, and then last year he missed 1, but we also got a free kick out of him. We did a free kick versus Milton in the JV game, and he made that. So he's a solid kicker and punter. So we're excited for him.
Outstanding. Well, you were mentioning your offensive staff, how it didn't really come together until late in the offseason, but I think last time we talked, you were describing your staff overall, and it's pretty interesting. You got guys who have college experience, NFL experience, guys from other states. So just kind of give us a sense of what this Lambert staff looks like.
It's pretty intact. We're fortunate enough to have great administration and our guys, and we get along, and everybody's got a say. So, we're excited to get started. And we're, like I said, we're kind of ahead of where we were definitely last year at this time. I basically took over like 3 weeks ago to the year. At this time last year, it was 2 of us. It was me and Coach Hurd on defense, defense coordinator. We've been our kids are working extremely hard, and the coaches are ready. We're ready to get rolling.
Yeah, and in terms of defense, last year, I think we spoke after the Dawson County game, but you said you probably had 18 guys that were in that rotation. There was a lot of depth. How's the depth look at this point in the offseason, just in terms of that rotation?
We've got quite a few guys that got a lot of experience last year. I think we counted 9 that were pretty much full-time players that are returning, so we feel pretty good. We've got to replace some good players. Our nose guard, Stephen Aguilar, was a really good player for us last year, and he ended up getting hurt late in the year. And then, our linebacker, Joe Tripp and Drake Smith, they'll be tough. And then our two safeties, Tommy Morris and Bradley Gabriel. Bradley was kind of the spearhead, and Joe ran the front, and Bradley ran the back end. But we rotated guys in. Our three corners were all sophomores, Harrison Richard, Cam Bland, and Christian Smith. Harry's going to go to safety, and Jack Ryan played a bunch throughout the year at safety as well. We got Branson Brooks back, who broke the school record in sacks last year as a sophomore, and Carson Knowles at linebacker, Davis. Heck, I'm going to brain freeze here. Hell, I can't think of his last name. Finn Brower will be at D-line. I'll come back to him. And Thomas Hall, Davis Dobbs. Or Noah Dobbs, sorry. Davis is his brother. And Finn Brower and Thomas Hall back on D-line. So defensively, we feel like we've got some really talented kids, we're excited to get back. And again, 2 years in a row, we've run the same defense. So this will be our third year in a row. So they understand the fits and what it takes.
Certainly. So talk a little bit about Branson Brooks. His 10.5 sacks last year as a sophomore. Wasn't the biggest guy, but just seems to have that football mindset, knows how to get to the football. So what have you just seen in his development heading into his junior year?
Yeah, he's put on some weight now, and he's in the middle of lacrosse season right now. But they watch film every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. They come in and watch film at lunch with our defensive coordinator, all the backers, and so we, they're ahead of the game. He's very knowledgeable about what we want to do and what we're trying to do, and he'll be able to take control of the front seven for sure.
All right, and another underclassman that we were impressed with, we're actually going to play a clip right now. That's Tommy Lafayette. He had a great season. Let's go to it right now. So that's what the off season's all about right there, that squat rack. He put up that 425 pretty easily. So what I always say when I see guys squatting those big numbers, it's you could have put 375 on it. You could have put 385. But your guys are challenging themselves. They want to get those max totals up. So let's talk about Tommy and then what the weight room's been like this off season.
Yeah, Tommy, we've got three really solid backs. Tommy Lafayette, he was injured like 5 games, but had a phenomenal year. You got Cam Bland, another sophomore, and then we got Ethan Terry, who really was a starter for us as a sophomore, and then those three rotated and split the carries last year. The weight room has been phenomenal. We got here in COVID year. We had 0,000-pound club kids. We just did our max outs last week. We got 5 that are in the 1,000-pound club. We had 9 guys when we got here that power cleaned over 225. We've got 36 kids now that power clean over 225, and that's 9 through 11. And so we're pretty excited about that. And I think there's like 21 guys over 405 in squat. And so we've done a really good job. Our bodies have changed. We feed them every day. They get protein shakes every day. And so we're trying to do the best we can to compete with everybody else. And our kids are really getting after it in the weight room.
Yeah, so you said Tommy got injured. Was that late in the season?
No, he got injured in week 5 against East Coweta, and then he missed basically almost all our region games except the Milton game. He was out, and he came back. He pulled a hamstring in the East Coweta game and came back, played a handful of snaps in that game, and came back in the playoffs.
Yeah, he certainly came back healthy, as evidenced by that squat, and then we saw him at the Georgia Elite doing his thing. So, I mean, last year he was just one of the many underclassmen you guys had getting experience carrying the ball. He also could obviously catch out of the backfield. You guys have a ton of balance offensively. So talk about just that group in the backfield and just kind of the versatility and experience they're going to have coming back.
Yeah, you got Cam Bland, who was all region athlete because he played both ways. He played running back, he played corner, and he played on every single special teams we had. So he's such an athlete. He can run and catch. He's very elusive with the ball in his hands. And then you got Tommy back there as well, who caught a bunch of passes and a little bit of slot, which Cam's going to do as well this year. And then Ethan Terry, who, like I said, is kind of a hidden gem. We feel like we got three really, really good backs. And Ethan was a starter for us when we lost Harrison. And you got me all confused with my names here. Harrison Payton 3 years ago or 2 years ago. And Ethan stepped up as a sophomore and did a really good job for us. So we're excited there. Christian Smith's another sophomore kid that played both ways. He got injured early in the year, came back for the region games, and he ended up having a big game versus North Gwinnett. Had 3 touchdown catches. He's probably the most explosive kid we've got in the return game as well. And then Nathan Downey's a returning wideout. And then we returned 2 O-linemen. We only played with 5 last year, and 2 of them are coming back. Jackson DeLoach is a sophomore, big sophomore, Power 5 kid, I think, and Daniel Walkway, who's a guard. Those guys have done extremely great job in the weight room and will be big returners for us.
And then at tight end, that was Luke Logan. He played a huge role. I mean, not every game he's out there getting a ton of catches, but he allowed you guys to not have to change personnel. He can do a variety of things. So he's graduated. What's the tight end position looking like?
Yeah, we got Fenton he played a little bit. He played sparingly in our 2 tight end set stuff, but had a really good JV year. He'll be a senior. He's put on and has gotten a lot stronger. He's not as big as Luke per se, so he'll be able to do the same things that we asked as far as being able to not have to change personnel.
Absolutely. And then talk a little bit about the quarterback position. Obviously, replacing James is going to be tough, but it looks like you might have a quarterback battle going on.
Yeah, we actually have a handful of them. We're excited to see how they all progress. James Thorson is going to be a senior. He's been in the program since we've been here. Marshall Coleman is a sophomore, and Ethan Daugherty is a freshman, going to be a sophomore. Marshall's going to be a sophomore, going to be a junior. So those three will battle it out over the summer, and we'll go with who we think is going to give us the best opportunity to win.
Yep, you'll have options there. And then in terms of receiving, who have you seen just guys that are going to have to come in and just handle that role?
Well, we're going to have to use Tommy and Cam at some spots. And then, again, we got Nathan Downey. And we got to replace Brandon Jones, who was a 49 receptions, 1,000 yards, and, 11 touchdown guy. And that's hard to do, but he did a great job of stepping up to replacing Kojo. So one of these guys are going to have to step up. We got Carter Chung's another kid that can step in and play, and the Carson Mayer, who's a sophomore, going to be a junior. He's a big, long kid. So we feel like, Cam and Tommy, and between those guys going from the backfield to receiver 2 can give us some depth.
Yep, and then just in terms of Lambert, I've noticed it. There's kind of like a specific identity. You look at the lacrosse team, they lock it down defensively. They play with that attitude, really just hard-working, tough kids. So with that, the Lambert football program, I kind of get the sense of the same thing. These are tough kids. They're hard workers. They do the right things. Just what is the defense going to have to do this season just to, kind of give you guys that energy and attitude?
You know, we've got to have that same mentality that we're going to create turnovers, give our offense the best starting field position. We started last year on the negative 38, which is, we felt like I think our opponents start on the negative 22, and so we're gaining 16 yards there in special teams and offense and in defense. Like I said, they created 28 turnovers, which was huge. That's a big part of being successful on defense is creating turnovers and going 3-and-outs and not giving up big plays. We've got to eliminate some big plays that we gave up last year. We feel like our guys. We've got 3 DBs or 4 DBs that have quality playing time back there. Jack Ryan, Harrison Richards, Christian Smith, Cam Bland played a ton of snaps. And so we're excited for them. And 3 of those guys are just going to be juniors too. So, and then up front, we got to find a little bit of depth on defensive line. But we've got, Anderson Schultz has put on a ton of weight and has gotten extremely strong. And Caleb Lewis is explosive as well, and Jet Conley. So we just don't have any huge guys that can clog a middle. So we got to be quick. We got to be fast.
Yeah, and obviously you got some guys that are going to be seniors next year, but it just seems like your class of 2025 is going to have a ton of experience. That seems to be a really special group.
Yeah, they when they were 9th graders, they handled the county pretty good. The 9th grade team ran through people pretty solid, and it's going to show. I hope, and I hope it shows this year. They played. I think we were playing like 9 to 11 sophomores last year on average, and so yeah, we were young, but we had some seniors that were really good leaders too that kind of pulled them guys along, and that's what made it a special run. And we're using the motto, don't be satisfied, and we can't be satisfied with what we did because last year's over, and so we've got to move on, and our goal is to win the region and make a run.
Yeah, and then last question, who are you guys going to scrimmage this year?
We picked up Roswell. Roswell's coming to us on, I think, the 11th or maybe something like that. I think it's August 11th. We're not scrimmaging anybody. We're not spring practice.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, that would be a nice way to end the summer, a scrimmage against Roswell at home, getting you guys ready for the slate. So, Coach, thank you so much for coming on. We look forward to seeing you at the Colquitt County 7-on-7 and getting ready for 2023.
We will be there. We'll be there on that Wednesday, the 14th.
Awesome. Well, I'll see you there. Thanks, Coach.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So there goes Coach Beach. Yep. Well, last year they obviously had an incredible season. They started 9-0. They ran into Milton in the season finale. That was a top 10 matchup. Milton ended up winning that one for a 5th straight region title. That game's going to be huge once again. But really, I think the most interesting aspect of this year's Lambert team is going to be that class of 2025. Yes, there's a great opportunity for them this season to kind of repeat the success they had this last year and build off that. But, man, they're going to be really good in 2 years and obviously this year too, because all those sophomores were starting. I think having Tommy Lafayette healthy and back is going to be huge. I mean, even early last year when we spoke after just 2 games, he wasn't having to do too much. He'd take 4 or 5 carries in a game, end up going for 100 yards and a touchdown because they had so much young depth at that running back position. The key's obviously going to be at quarterback, replacing James Tyree, replacing their tight end, replacing their top receiver. But I think defensively they'll be good. Their school's all-time leading sack guy is back after setting the record as a sophomore And so a ton of returning talent. I do think their schedule is favorable early. It's going to be Sequoia, Dawson County. Those were lopsided wins last year, 41-14, 49-6. I think they'll be able to get off to a hot start, but then it's just going to be about that region, and it's not getting any easier. They'll have West Forsyth again, Denmark, South Forsyth, and then Milton. I think all those teams are improved from last year. And then get through that region, and then obviously we know what the 7A playoffs are all about. So it will be year 2 for Coach Beach as head coach. He definitely had a great debut season, and we'll see what the Longhorns can do. But let's go ahead and take a quick break. Thank our sponsors, Georgia Farm Bureau.
Our mission has always been to support Georgia farmers. That's why we created Georgia Farm Bureau Mutual Insurance Company, providing financial protection that farmers needed. While this remains the same today, we've grown to protect all Georgians through home, auto, and life insurance. From the very beginning and into the future, we stand for every Georgia community.
We are our Farm Bureau.
All right, welcome back. I won't hold you guys for too much longer, but just wanted to point out a couple big games to watch for tonight. I think on the lacrosse end, it's going to be the big matchup between North Paulding and Walton. North Paulding is having an incredible season. This is a rematch of the semifinals last year, and it's going to be for the region title. Can Walton have that signature win, or can North Paulding take the victory and really put itself in position to have a historic run? There have not been too many programs that have won state titles on the boys' side in Georgia's highest classification. Lambert has dominated that. Walton has been able to get a state title. They got it right before the COVID season. But North Paulding is trying to be a team that wins their first this year. Same deal with West Forsyth. Buford's playing outstanding, but I think that's a huge matchup right there. Had another game I was thinking of. Oh yeah, let's shout out Houston County Baseball. Najee had their head coach on the show yesterday. It is incredible how stacked their team is. He was going over the players they have. I mean, so many guys that are already signed. You got potential MLB prospects, guys that are throwing 99 miles per hour in the outfield, blasting home runs, and they still haven't yet hit their stride. They're going to close out their season next week against Ola. They've played the national schedule. They played in the biggest tournament over the spring break week, and I just think they have a really strong chance in 6A. Had a bunch of other teams that have looked like they could be number one. Blessed Trinity, Pope, Lassiter's had some big wins. But in baseball, beating Houston County in a 3-game series is going to be very tough because they have multiple aces at the mound, and they're basically averaging about 10 runs a game. So that will be a huge to watch. Those playoffs will be starting soon. The other thing, I'll have this up on Score later today. We're going to post a story kind of about the first 20 years of Score Atlanta, how the company has evolved, all the different partnerships and kind of different ventures that they've been a part of over the years, and then what the future looks like. So that story is going to be up at scoreatl.com probably in an hour. So be sure to check it out, give you a good idea of what's on board with the events and just some of the new things that we are adding this upcoming year. But that will be it. We'll be back on Monday. Hope everyone has a good weekend, and we'll see you then.